All right, let's have Sean. He's one of the directors of Black Harvest.
Yeah, that's the name.
And I have a question, because you're one of the directors. So tell us about how this collaborative work came about.
Well, John Willie and I know each other from film school, and he wanted to do a film in America, and I was interested in this topic, and we sort of came together and went to Luxembourg for Peace from Luxembourg. So we went to them for funding, and we basically spent a couple years in North Dakota. So.
Nice. Well, this movie is about a lot of things. It's about our lives. It's also about immigration, and we don't think about immigration internally. We always think about the foreign people coming in. But this is a country based and built and structured on immigration. And just as at the end he says, you know, it's like another chapter is added to his family history from his family who came from Germany. Now it's him traveling within the United States. And displacement, exile, immigration, identifying with a place or a culture or whatever can happen at every level. You don't have to come across the ocean or across borders. You can be doing that within your own. You can change neighborhoods and still feel like that. But what is also very interesting about this film is that it contextualizes the whole thing at a period of time in American history and what is going on in our economy and in our culture. But there's always that element of the American dream and the chase after something better and improving yourself. How do you want to say something about that? Would you want to say something about that?
Well, you said it pretty good. But I think we try to keep the American dream element sort of out of the film much more than we sort of thought the American dream aspect of it. A lot of these people that were there looking for jobs weren't really there for a dream. They're there more for desperation, which I find a little bit different. But we actually have our North Dakotan here, so
maybe we should.
he can ask him a question about that. How he feels about that. And he's still in North Dakota as well, so he hasn't left yet. But John, you want to come up and talk about it? We'll find some questions for you.
Most easily said,
Yes.
it's still a nightmare.
Let's see who wants to ask a question.
Go ahead. Oh, you want to just, you can yell, I can hear you from here.
I
Yeah.
very much enjoyed your wonderful poetic turn of phrase, and I wondered about your education or your interest in reading or anything like that, because you had some fabulous lines. I just thought
You're a perceptive person.
Well, here, John.
I'm actually,
John's very well read.
I'm actually have two jobs, a full-time rancher, and then I'm a national park ranger from April to November every year. That's why I look more than a little exhausted on most of those scenes. But so Henry David Thoreau is a hero of mine. Edward Abbey is a hero of mine. Oliver Leopold, conservation is so. I do a lot of reading. In fact, I bought 3 books today. I spent a bookstore, you know. So, and in a different sense, I would say this is a hell of a long ways from North Dakota. like tomorrow afternoon, this time we'll be back at the ranch feeding my cattle. So.
I'm glad you kept some.
Well, there's one, you know, this story, as I explained to Sean and everyone else, the story is not over.
No.
It didn't end with the movie. You've probably seen photos of the exploding bomb trains in North Dakota. That's where I live. I feel bad every time I see another bomb train go boom somewhere, and I say, God, you know, that's our life. So socially, you know, this is an environmental and social disaster second to none. Doug mentioned fourth world, well, we're a third world country being strictly raped and pillaged for natural resources. With little or no regard to those of us who have lived there for generations, whether that be Native Americans or European settlers like myself. So there are a few benefits, none of which I've seen yet, obviously, but apparently there are a few benefits, but the downside is so immense. And I will say this, most of us or all of us native North Dakotans did not mind moderate oil development because we all burn some oil. But what is the problem is the extreme nature of it is just completely out of control. It's destructive. I mean, our crime rate, you name it. So it's a very tragic time. And the straw hasn't happened quite yet. That has driven me away, but it's like really close. Right now they're building a monster power line strictly to service the oil well, like 300 yards from my front door. Right where the tractor and mailbox was, right across the street. So I kept that power line off of my land, so the neighbor instead of putting it on his land, and that's actually closer than it would have been had it been on my land. So it's an ongoing mess. Thanks.
Well, what is interesting also is the extreme nature of it, as you put it, and also the complete lawlessness. It's like, you know, it's the wild, wild west again, and at this day and age, and you expect something completely different. But what is being done about that? May I ask that question?
Done about what?
About regulating all this.
Oh. We could write a book on that. We could do another movie on that, obviously. Politically, whatever camp you're in doesn't count. But there, right now, this day, this time, we are Republican run 100%. We were a relatively innocent people. As I said in the movie, we trusted humanity to an extent. We thought, well, life is going to be good and all that. So we feel 100% sold down the river by our political leaders, who many of us actually suspect are quote unquote in bed with the oil industry. And it's pretty easy to see. Many of you probably are a great admirer of Deborah Sontag, an article she wrote late last summer with regard to this super destructive oil boom. To me, and to most of us locals, you know, the local media is too close to what's going on there, too afraid politically to challenge the status quo that is. So we are actually relying on media from everywhere else, New York City, across the ocean, I mean, you name it. The farther from the oil patch you are, the better you challenge the crap that's going on around me. I mean, that's a real tragedy. I mean, you know, when I saw that, I said, well, that's like ancient history. You know, so much has happened since. The good news right now is that we're experiencing, you probably all know, a modest slow motion bust, which, you know, obviously I celebrate with immense glee every time I hear something like, yes! You know, as a national park ranger, I'm wilderness ranger in Theodore Roosevelt National Park. I've been a ranger there since I got out of college years ago, but, you know, I did law enforcement there 27 years, and that's the part, unfortunately, the NPS would not let these guys do anything on what's actually the more important part of my life. My life has been defined more by wilderness than by cattle. I went to college not to be a rancher, but I went to college to be a biologist, so that's where my real identity lies. But, you know, so here you got probably not even half of me. But so at the park, I mean, the chaos in the park is immense. It has increased. The guys write more tickets now in one day than we used to write in a month. Easy. I mean, the park, we've got meth, we got everything in the book. We got felons, we got everything that any city has, except on a slightly smaller scale, but it's extremely destructive to the park and to the experience in the park. But I still invite you. Come see Theodore Roosevelt National Park. It's a really cool place.
I want to say something about the merit of the film, because it's very important. This festival is about issues, is about social problems, and our job is to draw awareness about these issues, but that's not all. This movie had the beauty, aesthetic, and the cinematographic value, the production values, along with the message and what it is about. And I salute you for that.